I see people are trickling in, and of course, lots of people sent messages that they would like to view the recording later. So I think we can get started. I'm really excited about today's discussion. My name is Namita Datta, and I manage a global program called Solutions for Youth Employment. It's based here at the World Bank. It has a large number of partners, NGOs, private sector, foundations, donors, and also quite a large number of World Bank group teams that work on youth employment. So today's discussion, we would talk about this issue of online gender-based violence. As I think it's not anything new when I say that the world of work is changing very rapidly with the role of technology. And in a way, it's a good thing because we are noticing that it's opening up new types of job opportunities for women who, at least over COVID, we know that a large number of women took advantage of being able to work remotely, the opportunities of digital jobs, which help women overcome mobility constraints. So this is a good thing. But what we have not paid enough attention to is that there are some associated risks. And that risk is that of gender-based violence that is facilitated by technology. So it's a new type of gender-based violence. We've talked about gender-based violence for years, and we worked on it. But this is a new development. And to be honest, a lot of us were not even taking note of the risk that this type of violence has on the psychological and mental health of women, particularly young women. But also it has the risk of undermining the very positive opportunities of digital skills and digital jobs. And so we collectively, as a development community, need to really start doing something concretely and sort of working towards making sure that we are addressing this risk. And how should we do that? It's still a new topic. Now there are different terms that I use: technology facilitated violence, but really it's cyber harassment, it's cyber bullying, it's cyber stalking, it's doxing. I mean, all types of new ways of inflicting harm on young women, and that carries the risk that women may actually drop out of or not simply access these new types of jobs that are so fundamental, and that's going to be how the world of work is going to change in the future even more. And so women have they face this risk of not being connected to these new opportunities for the fear of having to face these new types of violence. So today I should stop talking actually, because what we're going to do today is to listen from 4 excellent speakers who know and who have actually worked on this topic. So I'm really delighted that we have 4 wonderful panelists today. Catherine Adea, who is the Director of Research at the World Wide Web Foundation. This is an organization that has done quite a bit of work, advocacy, but also research work on this topic. So welcome to you, Catherine. I understand that you are struggling a little bit with connectivity because you're calling in from Kenya, but hopefully, fingers crossed, the connection will work. I'm also delighted that we have 2 of our S4Y partners who work quite actively on this topic: Megan Anderson, who represents Digital Opportunity Trust, and Karen Kelly, who represents Laboratoria. Again, 2 outstanding organizations that work on gender empowerment. I'm so excited that you are able to join us today. And last but not least, our very own Alicia Hammond. I think those of us from the World Bank Group know her quite well. She leads the gender and technology agenda for the World Bank. And so Alicia will also talk to us about how the World Bank is thinking about it, and what might be some mitigation strategies we can think of, not just that social enterprises and NGOs and practitioners can take on ground, but also how do we need to think about it as policymakers? How do we need to think about it as leaders of technology companies, etc.? So So I'm really excited to hear from our panelists. And I will keep quiet now. Please, the other thing I wanted to say was please feel free to use the chat function and put in your questions and comments and reactions. Hopefully, we'll have some time in the end for Q&A. But over to you, Catherine.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm sure you can hear me clearly. So let me just share my screen, then we can get to it. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. Okay. And thank you for this opportunity you've given me and you've given the Web Foundation. Okay, I'm on now. You can see the screen. Yeah, so thank you very much. Yes, and I'll just go quickly through. I mean, the slides are going to be here for anybody who'd like to see them later on. But yes, I'm the Director of Research at the World Wide Web Foundation. And for those who know the Web Foundation, it was founded by the Satim Berners-Lee and Rosemary Leith. But what we work for is a world where everyone has affordable and meaningful access. That is what we're working for. And right now I'm sitting in my car because I don't have meaningful access on top of a hill, but I want to make sure that I'm able to attend this webinar. So these are some of the things we're working for, because you may have all the gadgets, you may have everything that's required, but you cannot connect meaningfully. And we're also looking for a web that improves lives and where our rights are protected. We do original research, which you've already mentioned, and advocacy and public action. Basically, we are trying to shape policies and products needed for the web we want. But in fighting for the web we want, so far, we've been able to ensure that, well, I would say ensure, but over the years, we've made internet access affordable to over 600 million people in low and lower middle income countries through our work. And we've uncovered gender inequalities in 22 countries through our Women's Rights Online Network, which I'm going to share a little bit about, because they've been very critical in leading advocacy on policies which we work on at the country level. But more importantly, last year, we secured really unprecedented commitments from the world's biggest tech companies to tackle the abuse of women on their platforms. And here, when I say women, I'm also talking about women and girls. So the Web Foundation, we actually work on, when we say women, we are working on women and girls. Giving you an example, Satim Berners-Lee in 2020 used the web's birthday to actually highlight the inequality online in his annual letter. And what I've put there on the screen is just really snapshots of various media when they were discussing what Satim wrote in his letter. But the letter outlined 3 key challenges, and one of them includes online gender-based violence. The other was, of course, access. And then what you spoke about at the beginning, and that there is definitely a hidden online discrimination against women. So that pushed us to focus our work in 2020 into 2021 more on recognizing the gender challenge, not just of getting women online, but what happens to women and girls when they are online. And that is the work that the Web Foundation was doing last year, because we had to tackle this as an integral part. We cannot fight for the web we want if we're not addressing what is happening to women and girls online. And as I said, these slides will be available for anybody who would be interested. But key to this, in our priorities last year, and we continue to work on this, is building on the success of our very innovative tech policy design lab. And this is where actually we did a lot of work last year with tech companies, and I'll explain a little bit again later on working on online gender-based violence. We also leverage on what we call the contract for the web. And our fight is to close the digital gender divide and make the web work for women and girls. And our approach, this is quite clear, even if I don't go into details. Definitely, as much as we argue about these things, gender-based violence has been discussed for years. Online gender-based violence is lacking sufficient data. But even when we talk about it, sometimes you find people still asking you, where's the data? So we strive to make sure there's empirical evidence that somebody can lead into developing solutions. So that's what we're doing with the tech companies and building alliances. We really cannot do this alone. The Web Foundation can't do it alone. UN Women cannot do it alone. The tech companies can't do it alone. We have to build alliances to make sure we're co-creating and working towards sorting this issue and catalyzing action. So this one, I'll not go into the finer details of this because you can also find it on our site, but our Women's Rights Online network, we work through in Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Caribbean. And we are working with these countries basically on bridging the gender gap in technology and policy making. Right now, we've added about 3 other countries, Pacific, Papua New Guinea, Tonga, and Samoa, all working with us. We've got researchers working on bridging the gender digital gap through what we call gender audit scorecards. And basically what these scorecards done, we've already done them in 22 countries. We are just trying to ensure that we achieve the SDG 5B, that is understanding the causes of the digital gender divide and taking urgent action. So these gender scorecards look at issues of access in the country. They look at issues of issues even of online gender-based violence, where the data exists in the country and where it's lacking. These are now issues for further discussion, even at policy level. But because of the interest we have in bridging the gender digital divide, our flagship report in 2020 was exactly that title that you see here. And it was based on focus group discussions, again, empirical evidence, interviews, and surveys. But what came out of that is what is in red there. It was clear that women were still facing a multitude of barriers across globally in the countries that we work on. But most of them talked about lack of trust in privacy and security, barriers in digital skills, and significant gender gaps in meaningful internet connectivity. As I remember, I keep telling you I'm sitting in my car on a hill in the rural area. So, and I can afford this. How many can? So we move on to the issue then that we worked on last year. So I've shared what we worked on in 2020. And because of time, I know I'm rushing a little bit, but I think we can, this will be available as well. But last year in 2021, we worked with the tech companies, including Facebook, Google, TikTok, and Twitter. And this is where we got them to adopt really, I keep saying it's unprecedented, commitments to tackle online gender-based abuse and to improve women's safety on their platforms. This really was the first time there was a cross-industry collaboration so that companies can also hear from these people what challenges they're having on their various platforms. And these commitments were developed really over time. I can't say, they didn't just happen in one meeting. It started off with consultations, online gender-based violence with a team. We met women politicians in a different consultation. We met journalists, and then we met women, young women and girls. And what the evidence that came up is what we took into these workshops, which were policy design workshops using a human-centered approach, design approach. And the experts came from tech companies, civil society, and academia, over 35 countries. And what they were basically discussing is how can we develop and design, co-create basically design solutions to address the issues of online gender-based violence. Some of the themes that came up, I'll say the commitment themes came up in two categories: curation and reporting. So in curation, one of the things that some of the things that came up is really in some of these platforms, you need to offer more granular settings. The women and girls should be able to see who can see what they're doing, who can share, who can comment, who can reply to their post, for example. Using simple and more accessible language throughout user experiences, because these are some of the challenges that people have addressed, even when they're having this, when the OGBV is a big issue. And then even easy navigation. I'm sure even some of us who are quite learned have challenges in accessing the safety and access to safety tools. And then reducing the burden on women proactively by reducing the amount of abuse they see. Even right now, I know some of you are aware about some things that are going on. I mean, there's something I think we've been following on Twitter, and you can just see there's really OGBV happening there right now. I don't want to. I mean, I don't really want to discuss it because maybe it will come up in further discussions. But in terms of other commitments, the reporting. One of it is offering the users, these women and girls, the ability to track and manage their own reports, and even the capacity to address context and language, and more clearer policy and product guidance when reporting abuse. Because sometimes those things, it just can't follow. What do you want me to do when I want to report an abuse? I've been abused, and yet the effort to even report is so much work. And then establishing additional ways for women to access help and support during the reporting process. So as I come to the end, one of the things we did, and you could then find it in the links I'm going to give you, is we used personas. So the human-centered design, we had personas. But some people have been asking, what's the next phase? And that's the work that's going on right now. Yes, there were all these commitments, and the commitment letter is there on our site as well. So the next phase is really holding these companies accountable for these commitments, but working with stakeholders. As I said, we have to build alliances to establish the standards for sharing this data around online gender-based violence. As I've said, there's really a dearth of data in this area. So the sharing of data and understanding would really help. And finally, of course, the next steps include just exploring and testing some of the prototypes and solutions we came up with from the workshops. Of course, the time frame is something that's is in discussion because we have to prioritize how to solve these problems, and transparency, really, publishing and sharing meaningful data and insights in implementing these commitments. So I've given some useful links there, and but otherwise you can find more on the World Wide Web website on online gender-based violence. So you can see the work we did, the workshops, the digital gender scorecards. So I think I will stop there for now to give others a chance to also share, and I'll be here to have further discussions. And I know my colleague, Kat Townsend, is also online, and she's the Director of Policy, working closely on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you for the pioneering work you have done on this topic. And I'd love to ask a few more questions, actually, in terms of just what types of commitments you got from these companies. I mean, you mentioned some of them, but then, of course, I think you also highlighted this important issue of just not having enough data. A lot of the data that we have is through small focus group discussions. And some of the data actually interestingly shows that even men, it's not just women, but even men are subject to this sort of an online technology facilitated violence. So your point absolutely well taken about additional research, additional data. But then, of course, the issue of how do we, as policymakers, design adequate regulations? But then, actually, even the next step, once you even have the regulation, how do you actually implement it? Because we've seen on this topic that women fear even coming forward and reporting. And so how do you shift people's mindset as well? We'll come to some of these questions. I see a lot of there's a lot of chat. I know Diana wants to know a lot about also how you gather data. And we'll come to some of those questions towards the end. I want to go to Megan now. Megan, you're with us. Megan works with Digital Opportunity Trust. Um, and I think from Megan, right? I mean, we want to understand like how as a youth employment program, and this is something actually we are seeing across our partnership. A lot of youth employment programs are very right focusing on providing digital skills to young people and young women because this is important for them to access job opportunities in the future. But how do you then deal with this risk that women who are online and who are accessing digital platforms, for example, how do they deal with it? So over to you, Megan, to tell us a little bit about what your organization has done.
Great, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm just working to get my sharing possible.
And while you get your slides up there, Megan, I just also wanted to share with everybody that we recently published a discussion note on this topic that pulls together some of this research and also highlights some things that we can do as policymakers. We did this together with our gender colleagues in the World Bank. And I'll request my colleague Angelica if you could just post it in the chat, that paper, because that does cover some of these points. I mean, if you wanted to look at more detail. Sorry, Megan, over to you. But I don't see your slides online though.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm having a delay in allowing like WebEx to share my screen. So I'll try to get that together as soon as I can.
I wonder if somebody from our team, Angelica, if you have Megan's slides, maybe you can help.
That would be excellent. I did send them through. I apologize for
Angelica.
that.
One second.
While we wait for the slides to come up, I wonder, I know I'm jumping back and forth, but Catherine, I wonder if you want to address this question that Diana raised about data in the meantime, and maybe we can get to some of the discussion points right away while we figure out the technology bit.
Sorry, I'm not seeing it, but I think Kat, did you respond to it? What was the question?
Yeah, the request was in the work that we're doing, how are we collecting data about countering about the prevalence of online gender-based violence and countering gender-based violence? So there is, as Niyaki mentioned, the team that she is leading with the Women's Rights Online around the world. They're doing household surveys, so you get as much detail as possible, especially for women who are not as often connected to platforms where we can easily gather this kind of information and data. What we found in working with the tech companies is that they often don't collect sex disaggregated data. So even though you can use proxies, they're not very well incentivized to identify who is most targeted online. So then the question is, all right, if you're not going to do it, what can we do? And so our proposal is to try to aggregate, because there's many people many of you are on this call, who've been working for years on collecting data about the experience of women online. And so we're hoping to work together to aggregate some of that data, to work under the umbrella of UN Women, who are running the outcomes of the GEF, the Generation Equality Forum. And we think that that will be a good effort. It won't be the only effort and it won't be the definitive one, but I think it's sort of the 1.0, and then we figure out what is the shared metrics that we use to try to say what's the status of women and what's the status of violence and countering violence online. So welcome engagement on that, welcome critiques on that approach, and I appreciate your time. Thanks. And Nyaki, anything else you would add, please share.
I just want to check, Angelica, if you're able to pull up the slides. If not, Megan, would you mind just going ahead without your slide? We'd love to know what Digital Opportunity Trust is doing in this space.
Yes. Okay, great. Sorry, I've been able to address it. So would love to just click this and share, and we should be good to go. Okay. Please let me know if there's any issues with the view, and apologies again for the delay there and for your patience. Much gratitude on my end. I guess an example of our technology coming in the way of us connecting and interfacing. So today, what I really wanted to be able to discuss with the group was, sorry, my trackpad is not working. I really wanted to be able to dig into our work at DOT that we do around this incredibly important topic. So as was mentioned, I'm the gender specialist with Digital Opportunity Trust. My work relates to everything we do in terms of gender equality, implementing gender equality and equity approaches, and I'm also the safeguarding focal point. So this topic really is an intersection that I really care quite deeply about. And for at DOT, really what we focus on is building opportunities for youth in youth employment, digitally enabled employment. And so online spaces and online safety are really key to that work. I'll also just take a quick moment to introduce my colleague Anne Deridu, who is also on the call today. Anne is our alumni and youth lab coordinator. And so she's going to come in and speak to us about the actual insights that we are hoping to share with you all today around how we effectively engage youth in online spaces and how we've sort of sought to build out that experience. So as I mentioned, DOT is really, we like to call ourselves a youth-led movement. We operate in sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East. We have country offices in a few different countries in those locations. So Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Jordan, Lebanon, and Ethiopia. And then we operate through local partners in 4 other countries. So in Ghana, in Uganda, in Malawi, and in Zambia as well. And so what we do at DOT is really place youth at the center of their professional and personal development. As I said before, we like to call ourselves this youth-led movement. And part of what we'll share today are insights that we've gathered through this process that we call co-design with youth. For us, this is a really fundamental component of how we approach our work. And I think in the context of online safety becomes really crucial to understanding, really what we're talking about here from that youth-led perspective. So,
Megan,
yeah.
sorry to butt in. Just wanted to request you if you could keep it to 5 minutes because we lost a little bit of time. I want to make sure we have some time in the end for discussion. So if you want to just get straight to just keep your remarks to 5 minutes. Thanks.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. Okay, so in that case, I think it's best if we maybe move forward to discussing like the meat of it all. Then, in that case, with that prompt. So yeah, basically, the insights we'll share today were developed through a co-design and a user experience research process. Over the course of a couple of different projects DOT's engaged in, including our current Daring to Shift project. And so this process really focused on gathering these perspectives from youth. The reason I've asked Anne to join me is that she works really closely with youth, especially young women, on our online platform Inojo, which is what sort of prompted the co-design and developing these principles. But she also sees firsthand sort of the key role that safety plays in really fostering their engagement and their positive experience in the program. So one note that I'll just share is that we've heard directly from young women through these co-design processes that if they experience online harassment, they will either really minimize the role that they play online, that they'll only talk to folks they feel comfortable with, they will not put themselves out there, or they'll leave entirely. So for us, this is like incredibly key to engaging young women. Safety has to be a fundamental part of inclusion. So I'll pass along to Anne then to take us through sort of the key elements of this, the findings, really, the insights that we gathered through this process.
Thank you, Megan. I will get right onto it. And the first thing that I will talk about is the aspects of women feeling safe while engaging in online spaces. And so through our research, we have learned that women are more likely to trust technology and feel safe engaging in online spaces when that they know the platform is highly moderated and that there are clear reporting mechanisms, including a human response and a procedure to follow. So In addition to that, moderation and reporting needs to be obvious to the women and to the users. And this needs to be easy to know who to go to for help, as well as women were or are dissatisfied with existing reporting mechanisms, since there's no follow-up to a negative experience, meaning that they might leave the platform. The second thing to this is they have a high level of control over their online presence and interaction, as well as their privacy settings are easy to access and understand. And I'm sure when Catherine was speaking, she said there is the complication when you really do not know how to go about things. And so privacy settings being too complicated or too difficult to understand makes women shy away from these spaces. And the other thing is there are clear options to keep parts of their identity anonymous. And women reported that they could say more and accomplish more by being anonymous online without really needing to face the real world repercussions, especially of harassment. And an example is using avatars and selecting which parts of their identity they want to share and with whom makes them feel more safe. The other bit to this is the platform opens the possibility for creating connections outside their own community. And so many women, particularly in conservative contexts, were excited and enthusiastic about engaging with people in other communities, cultures, or countries, so that they would not need to confront the harmful gender stereotypes they have experienced in their own communities. Then the other bit is the platform also fosters opportunities to connect with a larger group of peers, as well as others. They feel safe engaging when they know others they know and trust are using it, particularly other women in their community, or if they are friends or if they are family. Next slide, please. So the next point is women feel are likely to feel included in online spaces when they can easily relate to the content and individuals they engage with online. For instance, are joining an online community that showcases relatable experiences or success stories from women, or one that they know is composed of like-minded people. This helps women to feel more comfortable to engage. Also, they feel included in their online engagement if the engagement here feels as human as possible, since women tend to engage more on platforms that have a conversational tone and interactive user experience. That is probably through conversational bots or static content that uses relatable conversational language and tone throughout. So women also reported that they feel included when the value they can expect from using digital tools and engaging in online spaces is clear from the beginning. So women want to know how these digital tools will support their success and that of those around them. The other thing they feel included is one way to make this value clear is if there is an engaging, welcome experience when joining an online space that gives them visibility of a value they can expect to get from this platform. So how it applies to their lives and who they can expect to engage with. So from the point of signing up to on a digital engagement space, women want to know what experience is going to be about, how relevant it is for them, what value are they expecting to get or can they expect to get, and who else is in this space. Megan? So the other bit is women feel more comfortable learning how to use technology when training is conducted in group settings with other women who have similar backgrounds, educational levels, and familiarity with technology. So this was particularly true for women in more conservative settings with less familiarity to technology. So learning for them with other women who have similar experience makes the process feel less intimidating, because they're coming in from one aspect, and they can start from one point and move together as a group. Then the other bit is they can relate to the person they're learning from. Their learning experience demonstrates care if the person who is facilitating this learning demonstrates care, and if the learning experience is customized to their reality. So women want to learn from and be supported by people they can relate to, people who understand their reality. And what we had mostly was that women would more likely take part in training if they received an individual invitation from the facilitators, an individual follow-up from these people. Happy to pass it on back to Megan.
I think that given the time, perhaps I'll wrap up our presentation here and just say that, you know, what this led to was a series of recommendations that we've taken to heart and we've continued to try and socialize and learn from at DOT. Very happy to discuss any of the things that Anne has presented. But really just to reiterate how important we feel this piece of a sense of safety is for learning and engaging, especially in those early stages of trying to get women into online spaces. So really appreciate the opportunity to speak on it today.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Anne. I think really important, very practical insights about incorporating, you know, how to train women to use the privacy settings, for example, how to use peer groups, how to use avatars where they want to be anonymous. I think those are really practical examples. I want to now move to Karen Kelly from Laboratoria, who also experimented with some insights like through their work with women. So over to you, Karen. And again, if you could keep your remarks 5 minutes, just maybe share with us what practically you did with through your training program. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Namita. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Kelly, and I am the Director of Partnerships at Laboratoria. Just to give you a brief context on what we do, Laboratoria is a Latin American organization that offers a world-class bootcamp in web development as well as UX design. And we now have an incredible community of over 2,400 graduates, and probably, if not the largest, one of the most largest communities of women in technology in the region. So we operate in 5 different countries, and we're also now have grown to be a team of over 100 people working towards our mission of empowering women who are dreaming of a better future to start and grow transformative careers in technology. I just want to highlight here a little bit of our timeline to show how we've expanded across the years. We began in Peru and now have presence, as I mentioned, in 5 countries in Latin America. A key turning point for us, though, was 2020 when we shifted all of our programming to a remote format. And I highlight this because not only are we preparing women to work in the digital sector, and most of our graduates now in many remote and online positions, but the learning experience itself is now fully online. It's live through Zoom, but it is a fully online experience, and that will allow us to expand our reach to many more countries in the region. So I'll kind of move ahead through this, but just so you can see the model that we follow, it's a 4-step model where we work from the admissions process, where we are looking for women who are seeking better opportunities, and they really we have no requirements in terms of the level of technology experience or knowledge that they have when entering our program. And I'll go in a second into explaining how the training program works and how gender-based violence workshops fit into that. But also wanted to explain that our commitment and the core of our work is not just focused on training itself, but in job placement. And so we have an individualized job placement process once our students finish the boot camp, and we've reached about an 85% average placement rate. So the importance here of job placement is that not only are then we talking about the risks that you mentioned, Namita, at the beginning. Yes, this is a great opportunity for more women to enter the formal workforce. Of course, there are new risks that come with that, but also part of what we see as key in our work is that women are helping, these women are helping bridge the gender gap within the tech sector, allowing us to have more women designing and building technology in order to address some of these risks, in order to address their perspective, some of the things Anne was just mentioning in terms of what can make women feel safe in these spaces. The more women we have designing and building technology, the better we will be able to be at having safer online spaces. So as I mentioned, we now, because of our job placement process, we've now actually reached 1,000 companies that have hired in Latin America. And a lot of our focus and our relationship with these companies is regarding their diversity and inclusion efforts and making sure they understand the importance of having women on their tech teams. And of course, what I just mentioned as well, following up with them as our graduates as well to make sure that they're satisfied, that they feel comfortable with the experiences that they are having once they are at these companies. So our bootcamp itself is a 6-month intensive model. As I mentioned, it's fully online at this point, either a web development or UX design bootcamp, where we really try and simulate the workplace environment from day one so that our students feel that they are prepared with the skills that they will actually be using in the workplace and not just kind of the learning skills that they need to have. And so this is important to mention because within our curriculum, we're not only focused on the tech skills themselves, but on the soft skills or the life skills or the skills for work that they will need to succeed. And so you'll see it's part of a wider curriculum. And something that we focus on is we're trying to move away from grading, from tests, from the traditional education system, and really put our learners at the center of their learning experience and to use self-awareness and self-knowledge as well as continuous reflection as the core of our work so that our students can feel owners of their learning experience, so that they learn how to learn and that they can really adopt this growth mindset and become owners of the learning experience as well as their professional growth once they are placed in jobs. Within this life skills curriculum, we have 8 skills that we focus on. I won't go into those details, but there's so much that we could cover, and it's a long boot camp in some senses, 6 months, and in other senses, there's just so much to cover that it's hard for us to get to the to kind of the in depth of what we would like in certain areas. But within these life skills workshops, we have what we call our personal development coordinators, most of whom are psychologists by training. And they work with our students on a variety of these different skills. And within those workshops, we have some topics covering gender inequality and violence. So some of these are introductory. For a lot of these women, it's the first time they are in a space where they are only women and feel safe in that sense. And so we start from the basic concepts regarding gender, different stereotypes. Yes.
Can I request you to wind up like in about
Yes, I have just one more slide after this one. And so we start with basic concepts, but because of our focus on placement in the work sector, we have shifted our focus. We had a kind of a wider range of workshops, but now we really take the time to focus on inequality and workplace violence, making sure that we're raising awareness about the fact that this happens and how it happens online, understanding what it is and the ability to identify it when it's happening, as well as strategies to address violence when they are experiencing it or seeing it. And so I just want to wrap up saying that we really want our students to exit the boot camp and be a part of our community, feeling like they are in a safe space, and not only telling them about kind of the risks, but also about how they can work together, and really emphasizing learning and working together in community to find ways to combat the different violence they may experience. So that's our presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions in the chat.
Thank you so much, Karen, and I'm so sorry for rushing you. I always do such a horrible job of managing time.
No worries.
But you know, I mean, I'm just listening to all of you, and I think like Catherine highlighted the role that technology companies have to play in this, and you and Megan and Anne highlighted the role that NGOs and foundations and training programs that work with women. What can we do? But I'm wondering, the onus isn't just on the technology companies, right? And on us as trainers and as NGOs, right? I mean, there's also a role that the government needs to play. There's also a role that society, communities need to play. I want to actually hand it over to Alicia to highlight a bit how we're thinking about this in the World Bank. And I think one thing that struck me was also, and maybe Karen, since you work very actively in Mexico, I think Mexico has been really leading the way, right, in terms of regulatory, when the government has put in place the Olympia Melo law, right, which is there are very few regulations out there that governments have enacted to specifically deal with this type of violence. And Mexico is one of them. Of course, we're also hearing from Philippines and Guatemala and several other countries. It's very interesting how regulators and governments are dealing with it. Maybe we come back to this regulatory issue towards the end, but I want to hand it over to Alicia. Alicia, you're there?
Thanks, Namita. Yes, and I'll keep it very brief so that we can jump into the Q&A. So thank you so much. The first thing I want to say is, for us as an institution, this is very new. So the idea is really to explore research and innovation so we can get a sense of what is effective at scale down the line. And so I would say our work in this area is organized in under three main themes. One is focused on the research. So Dana's on the line. This is something she's been spearheading since 2016. So we have the Development Marketplace to Address Gender-Based Violence, and that's a partnership between the World Bank and the Sexual Violence Research Initiative in South Africa. And a lot of what they do is to fund evidence-based research, specifically in low and middle income countries. And so they've funded about 50 research projects in 34 countries, including some great examples at this intersection of gender-based violence and technology. So I won't dig into the details here, but the brief that Namita and Angelica shared in the chat, that has some more specific examples. A second research initiative is a bit more recent. It just started with Women and Business and the Law. And so what they've been doing is analyzing the legislative frameworks across several economies. And so what they found so far is, of the economies that they reviewed, about 29% have legislation in this area, with South Asia leading the way. And so the goal eventually, as this work progresses, is to get a sense of what is good legislation in this area. It has to be specific, but what else? And how might this differ across different regions and different countries? So I think that's something that's going to be really, really helpful for us going forward. The second category is around operations. So we don't have many in this area, but we have some pioneering TTLs in the Pacific, James Newman and other colleagues. And so we have two interesting examples. One is from the Marshall Islands, and the second is from Micronesia, where they're working through large lending operations on online violence, and specifically what they're calling harmful digital communication. And so what they've done is a lot of primary research, a lot of community consultations, and as a result of those engagements, they are investing in developing the legislative framework, and specifically integrating gender within this as a part of broader cyber crime reforms, and making sure that they're investing in the Office of Women's Affairs, or whatever the equivalent is, and bringing these groups together. So it's not just this work happening in silos. So I think we can really watch that space to see how that develops, and see if that's an approach that we can take for other countries going forward. The third and final is just on the kind of strategic approach institutionally. So Digital Development Global Practice has a recent approach note on gender equality. And so our primary areas of focus are around infrastructure, platforms, digital financial services, entrepreneurship, and skills. But this is what we're thinking of in terms of a frontier area, and really digging into what makes sense for us to do with our client countries on online violence. And so we have more answers than questions, but what we're seeing is, one, the legislation is going to be very, very important, and making a good attempt to really get grassroots efforts engaged so that these are tailored for the specific country context. And the second is building the capacity to tackle these kinds of crimes. So whether it's around appropriate reporting mechanisms, working with law enforcement and other service providers, but really building the capacity at the country level to do that. And the third is around safety training. So really being concrete about online safety and getting the users engaged in that area. So that's what I wanted to highlight from an institutional perspective. And I think I'll close with three questions, or just to share what I struggle with in my daily work as I try and do this. One is thinking through, okay, we have these large global tech companies. We see that the Web Foundation has been doing phenomenal work in this area. But how do we actually, what do we do in a low and middle income context when we have pretty much very limited control? So how do we actually think about that from a partnerships perspective at the country level? The second is on the legislative framework. So I think we have to be really careful in terms of balancing a strong framework with laws that are also going to support freedom of expression. So being really thoughtful to say, okay, well, we do want to have a strong framework, but how do we think about how these tools could be used by authoritarian governments? What is a good law in this area that perhaps is less subject to abuse, but can still be protective for women and girls? And I think that's an incredibly hard question, and it might look different in different country contexts. So it'd be great to hear from or other panelists if they have any insights in this area. And then the third is on training. So a lot of what we do is focus on the girls and teach the women and girls how to be safe online, how to be anonymous, how to work on their passwords, how to, whatever it is. But I think there's this whole other side of engaging men and boys in terms of what are healthy behaviors online. And so really thinking through holistically how we might be able to do that in scale in our operations. So those are some things I kind of struggle with, and I would love advice from our other colleagues and maybe others on the line as well. So I'll wrap up here. Thank you, Namita.
Well, Alicia, you packed up quite a bit, and I know that you work quite actively on this, on the whole technology agenda. So you packed up quite a bit on this. I want to just open it up for questions, and I don't know if WebEx enables you to raise your hand. But anybody who wants to jump in, particularly on just how Alicia framed some of the questions, like what is the role of partnerships here? Number one. Secondly, what is the research agenda here? And I know, Diana, I don't know if you want to jump in terms of what are the challenges. Of course, I mean, and one challenges are fairly obvious, I guess. This is a hard topic to research, but how might we? Are there some interesting, innovative ways one can get at the research agenda? And I saw Sean's question, like, did you? And I see from Sean's comments that they tried to implement this in Pakistan. Again, a challenging environment to implement it, but how can one do research, and were you able to do it during COVID? And then the really important question, I'd love, Catherine, to hear your perspective on this whole legislation thing. What should governments be thinking about, particularly as Alicia highlighted, the balance between freedom of expression and really sending a strong message that certain types of violence would not be tolerated. So anybody who wants to jump in. Maybe I'll turn it back to the panelists if you wanted to respond to each other or
Okay.
questions you're seeing in the chat. Anyone.
I might let me just share one, and Kat, my colleague, could also come in, because I'm conscious of time. This is a discussion that we could have, and it could expand. But even from our own work, what I could not really explain in detail was when we were doing the 4 consultations, we were gathering evidence, and the evidence we made sure that everybody who needed to be in the room was in the room, so that they're involved in listening and understanding the needs of the women who use and are impacted by these tech companies' products and services. But even some of the things you're discussing, because when we have the policymakers in the room, they have to rethink even how they're designing and working on these policies. But they need evidence to be able to address them. But some of them are in denial. So you see, this is a discussion that we could go through. It depends. As somebody talked about government, somebody talked about other forms of government. It depends on who really is interested in having this addressed. And many are, but maybe they just don't know how to do it. They also need the evidence. They may not think it's such a big issue. Some think it's a big issue, but they don't know how to handle it. So that's what I'm saying. The discussion could go in so many ways, but definitely we had governments who were willing to listen, but they're saying, tell us, what do you want us to do? And then how do we do it? So maybe let me start off there and yield to somebody else. Otherwise, I'll just be talking and talking and time will go. Let me allow somebody else to also chime in. Kat, you want to say something? Oh.
I just reinforce that. I mean, we have a lot of governments who are showing interest, and some even we can give them language and they will pick it up and run with it. But really, a huge gap in not just writing the legislation is how do you train the enforcement? And so, how do you socialize? I mean, everybody's nodding their head. How do you socialize among civil servants? How do you socialize among police officers around law enforcement? What this actually looks like and how they can enforce the laws. And that's a huge gap. It's outlined in Generation Equality Forum. We have team member in Web Foundation who just made a major milestone in South African courts to hold the legal system accountable. So it's a multifaceted approach of how you would have anything that any milestone you reach, how it actually gets implemented and how it sticks. And I know Diana wanted to share as well.
Diana?
Thank you so much. I mean, there's oh, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. There's so much research to there to see what insight, maybe for intelligence pattern of the
Diana, you're yes, there's a problem, I think, with the connection. Maybe you might want to just speak closer to the microphone and maybe a bit slowly. I think it keeps breaking up.
Sorry. I was just saying technology facilitated gender-based violence is used for trafficking. It's used for shaming of women. It's used for political intimidation. And this is all happening, many of these abuses are happening in plain sight. So I would really kind of welcome us also looking at artificial intelligence and ways to bring in the tech companies to help us analyze the data that they already have. And at least, as Catherine said, sex aggregate the data to look at the different forms, the several different forms of technology facilitated gender-based violence that we have to address, I think, and the different policies and operations that we have to. It's not just one form of violence. I mean, it's trafficking, it's sexual abuse of girls, it's slut shaming, it's so many different things. And I think all of those will necessitate different interventions to address them. A politically motivated gender-based violence is huge in many parts of the world. How do we think of frameworks to protect women speaking in political spheres that might not be places where they're welcome? And I know cases even from Kenya where the violence translated into physical violence and the murder of a child of a candidate. So this is very serious, but I think there's data in plain sight that we can use to start making those arguments. And hopefully Alicia and this group, and as much as we can innovate in trying to understand the data that's already out there.
Yeah, and I would imagine that it also involves sensitizing law enforcement agencies, not just the laws, but the law enforcement agencies, the police officers who will show up to investigate, even if a woman has the courage to report. Right? They should know that this is a form of violence, and they should know what is the best way. I mean, there's enough research to show that even traditional, not online, but even traditional gender-based violence law officers sometimes don't know how to react. Very good point. Catherine, in your dialogue with the technology companies, I'm sure this stark sort of a trade-off between responsibility, accountability of the tech companies, particularly social media companies and platforms, versus freedom of expression, right? This is the classic tension. How did you navigate this? Like, tell us a little bit that nobody else knows. how you navigated this? How did you?
I'm going to yield to Kat. She knows why I'm yielding to her.
You're muted, Kat.
Kat, you're muted.
So sorry about that. How you I think basically what I find with the work that we're doing is we really work with people within these organizations. And kind of any of us could follow a path where you could go and be the lead for gender, you could be the lead for equity within any of these tech companies. So it's not that difficult to find somebody within a tech company that says, this is clearly a problem, we have to change it. They're less utopian, idealist, libertarian about the fact that everybody should be able to share online. So they're really trying to figure out themselves how they navigate their own internal systems, and how to make the case internally to put the protections in place. So I do find that with any sort of bureaucratic, and I'm sure you all have found different outcomes, and I'd love to hear about that. But the current partners that we have, they definitely have some blind spots, they have some gaps. But it's really trying to work with them as partners to say, all right, how are you going to change perceptions and how are you going to shift internally? I think the place that is really the part that's quite difficult is that if they say that they aren't collecting this data already and it's against their principles to collect the data because they want to have anonymity on their platform, that's a fundamental tension, and that's going to be really difficult to be able to counter.
Yeah, points, all very, very good points. Thank you so much. I think we've already gone a bit over the time limit, but as Catherine said, we could go on and on with
Could
this.
go on and on. And just a quick one, you could please visit our website and see a little bit more about the consultations and our engagement with the tech companies. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you very much. And all of this information that the panelists shared, their slides and the recording of this session, we'll upload on our website so that you can look at it. And also the discussion note that we wrote together with Alicia, very, very helpful suggestions from Diana. That's also on our website, and you can access it there. A big thank you to you all. I'm sorry that I mismanaged the time and we rushed with a few presentations, but this was a really important discussion. And thank you so much for joining. And I wish you all have a good rest of your day.